Yes, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live podcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back on this beautiful Friday night or evening, depending on wherever it is that you're joining us from. It's only 19 minutes past the hour of 9 p.m. As you know, on Friday, we come here much earlier than usual to get through the major stories from Friday and, of course, do a weekend preview and things like that. So, for those of you that will be joining us, thank you in advance, really. So we'll be looking at the draws from the UEFA Champions League. We'll also get to talk about the weekend preview, as I had promised you in the morning, because in the morning, we were unable to do the preview as I had hoped. Of course, there is a game tonight. That's the game between Wolverhampton Wanderers against Aston Villa tonight. This weekend, we also have the Derby de Clasica. That's on Saturday night at 8:30 p.m. The same time, Leeds United will be playing Manchester City. So it looks like it's going to be a blockbuster weekend. But what made the headlines today was everything to do with the UEFA Champions League. In as far as those draws for the round of 16 have been made. So you'll indulge me as I have audios tested just to make sure everything does check out before we can proceed any further in the wake of this particular broadcast. I hope our audio is good. I'm really trying to have it tested, but I'm really trying. Okay. Looks like we're okay. Looks like we are okay on the audio part. Thank you so much. So, anyways, yeah, those are the major stories from today that we'll be looking at. Perhaps a few reports are from team news here and there, depending on how the previews will go. But for the Aston Villa Wolverhampton Wanderers game, I mean, let's get to that in a bit because, like I said, the major story has been with the UEFA Champions League following those round of 16 draws that left some teams happy, others happier than others totally unhappy. I've been reading some allegations online suggesting that Real Madrid players are not very pleased with their draw because they have been drawn against Manchester City, because some of them are saying it looks like they have played Manchester City more times in the UEFA Champions League than they did play them when they were still in the Premier League, and that's to do with Chelsea's former Chelsea defender Antonio Rudiger as well as former Chelsea goalkeeper Thibaut Courtois. So I don't know what you guys would make of that, but at least those are some of the reports that are making the rounds. Of course, for those of you that are just joining us, kindly like the broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel. Please consider subscribing to the channel, but also liking the broadcast. And let me know where you're joining us from. I will be reading all your comments and let me know what you made of the draws. What is your round of 16 draw of the UEFA Champions League? What's that game that you'll be looking forward to? Really. Hello, Rogue Rev says hello. Wi-Fi password. That's a secret. You never know. The password could be secret, but that's a secret. Anyways, so really, Bongomingo. What does that mean? But anyways, I hope you guys are doing okay. But allow me put out a poll question. What has been your standout draw from the UEFA Champions League? UEFA Champions League round of 16. We'll put there some options. I will put PSG versus Chelsea. That's one of them, one of the big ones. Really, we'll have Real Madrid versus Man City as the other one. And we'll say add any other. add any other. So those are the options that we do have for our poll question this evening. What has been your draw? Your highlights, your standout draw for the UEFA Champions League. Particularly, I for one had predicted that draw for Real Madrid versus Manchester City, because we've gotten to see that draw quite plenty of times throughout the last couple of years. I think you have to go back to 2019, 2020, 2022, sorry, 2021, 2022. No, 2020, 2021, when Man City reached the finals and got beat by Chelsea. 2022, 2023, they were in it. Last season, they were in it. Real Madrid knocked out Manchester City at the playoff phase. Then this season, they already met at the Santiago Bernabeu, and Man City won the game by 2-1. And then they'll be back at it, home and away. Can Manchester City complete perhaps, beating Real Madrid thrice in the same campaign? We are waiting to see. Your names are Wi-Fi. Your names are Wi-Fi passwords. Really. Anyways, so for me, I think one of the standout draws is one between PSG and Chelsea. First of all, it's the kind of draw that I presume PSG fans would have been praying for, and perhaps the prayer for Luis Enrique, because it is Chelsea that sort of dethroned PSG's dominancy last season when they went ahead and beat them in the FIFA Club World Cup finals that were played in the summer of 2025 over there in the United States of America. So looks like PSG will have their revenge to plot against this Chelsea side, who beat them at the time by 3-0 to win that new expanded edition of the UEFA Champions League. Now, speaking about these draws, we're not talking about them for the first time. For those of you that care to be reminded, we did put out a video in those regarding those, draws, saying the UEFA Champions League draws. Man City have Real Madrid again, PSG versus Chelsea, Arsenal versus Bayer Leverkusen. As some of the, we added Arsenal to the conversation because they finished at the summit of the, UEFA Champions League phase. And then Manchester City, Real Madrid, of course, is always going to make the headlines, as well as PSG versus Chelsea. That's the UEFA champion versus the FIFA World Cup champion in Chelsea. So really, those ought to stand out. So I do give my views in that video, so you can also head over to the channel and watch that video as well. But do not forget to leave me, your views down under the comment section, and I'll be responding to them where necessary. But in terms of the draw itself, or the full draw as is PSG versus Chelsea. Sorry. Yes, PSG versus Chelsea for the round of 16. Liverpool will be away to Galatasaray, or Galatasaray versus Liverpool. Real Madrid versus Man City. Atlanta versus Bayern Munich. Newcastle versus Barcelona. Atletico de Madrid versus Tottenham Hotspur. Bordeaux Glimont versus Sporting Lisbon or Sporting CP, and Leverkusen versus Arsenal. Now, one of the first things that stands out, or that you take notice of, is that there is not a pair of teams that will be facing off each other from the same league at this stage of the competition. I do not know how UEFA managed to dodge that bullet, but usually it's a prayer. It's a humble prayer. It's a humble prayer that lays at the back of the minds of multiple clubs to avoid opponents from within their domestic league. For those of you that remember, during the playoff stage, you saw how Monaco were quite the thorn in the foot for PSG, because the reverse fixture ended in a 2-2 draw after PSG had won the first leg by 3-2. And they managed to go through 5-4 on aggregate. So then you now have this setup of a very, very incredible fixture. Now, my heart tilts towards Chelsea, because Chelsea, with their new manager, Liam Rossignol, while at Strasbourg, he still was one of those managers that gave PSG a bit of a headache whenever the two sides met there in the French League One. And perhaps we're going to see an extension of that bit of rivalry between Luis Enrique and Liam Rossignol. Now, among the reasons as to why I tilt towards Chelsea, not because Chelsea are miles better than PSG, or not because Chelsea beat up against PSG in the finals of the FIFA Club World Cup, but because I've seen PSG play right unconvincingly, and perhaps with a lot of fatigue from the extended labors of last season, because last season they did not have much of a preseason. In any case, after the climax of the season, after winning the UEFA Champions League, their first episode of doing that, when they beat Inter Milan by 5-0 in the final, they had to pack their bags and head over to the USA for the FIFA Club World Cup, after which, again, they had a very short stint on the sidelines in terms of rest before the season resumed again, and they had to, the football machine had to go again into the new season. So if you watch them, remember they went to Sporting Lisbon and got beat by 2-1. Bayern Munich beat them by 2-1. That was at the league phase. Maybe Bayern Munich is a worthy opponent that they could lose against, but against PSG they did not look good. I saw them lose to Stade Rennes by 3-1, and they looked a bit unconvincing. I saw them earlier on in the season getting beat by Olympique Marseille by 0-0 before. They mounted the perfect revenge and beat Marseille by, was it 5-0 in the reverse fixture, prior to the sacking or the parting ways of Roberto Di Zerbi with Olympique Marseille and things like that. So for me, it's a standout fixture. Then Galatasaray versus Liverpool. We know for a fact that Galatasaray knocked out Juventus, but it was no pretty walkover because it needed extra time, even when Juventus were a manless once again for the first leg, as had been with the second leg. Sorry, had been with the manless in the second leg, as had been the case in the first leg. This time round, Lloyd Kelly, the one being sent off in that fixture, while in the first leg, I think it was Calaba. No, is it Calaba or Cabal? I forget the correct pronunciation of the name of the player that was sent off. So really, Liverpool, they couldn't have hoped for a better draw because they got to avoid Atletico de Madrid, who was also another possibility for them to face at this stage of the competition. So it is Galatasaray versus Liverpool. In any case, whereas Galatasaray are no less an opponent, you do fancy your chances that Liverpool will owe their pedigree. We're talking about the 2019 champions of Europe, who also won the same, escapade back in 2005. In between there, they had played 3 other finals, which they all lost in 2007, losing to AC Milan, 2018 losing to Real Madrid, and 2022 losing to the same opponent. So I do fancy my chances to go with Galatasaray to go with Liverpool to get the better of Galatasaray. We're talking about a team, by the way, that also beat them at the league stage by 1-0. If you guys remember, Galatasaray beat Liverpool by 1-0. That goal by Victor Osimhen. And then we have Real Madrid, a party that never stops, a gift that keeps on giving as far as the UEFA Champions League is concerned. Like I said, in December, the two sides met, and Real Madrid got beat by Man City by 2-1. Nico O'Reilly and Brad Erling Haaland's penalty late on in that game were enough to decide the tie, while Rodrigo Goes was scored what turned out to be a mere consolation in that goal, albeit at the time, I think it had been the equalizer. And so these two sides, like I've said, have met quite multiple times before. Last season at the playoff stages, Real Madrid knocked out Manchester City 6-3 on aggregate after beating them home and away by 3-1 and 3-2, respectively. Then in the 2023-2024 campaign, the two sides met still at the quarterfinals, and Real Madrid knocked out Manchester City before advancing to the final later on, where they met Borussia Dortmund and beat them by 2-0. On that occasion, at the Santiago Bernabeu, it ended in a 3-3 draw before a 1-1 draw at the Etihad Stadium, culminating into a penalty shootout, which Real Madrid won by 4-3. Then, when you want things further back, the previous season, that's 2022-2023, when Man City got the better of Real Madrid, beating them by 5-1 on aggregate, because it was 1-1 at the Santiago Bernabeu and then 4-0 at the City of Manchester Stadium, also known as the Etihad Stadium. For Man City, that time they went all the way and won the competition when they beat Inter Milan by 1-0 in the final. That goal scored by Rodrigo Hernandez Cascante, commonly known as Rodri. Then in the 2021-2022 season, they also met at the semi-finals, and Real Madrid got the better of Man City after beating them 6-5 on aggregate score, because Man City won the first leg by 4-3, while Real Madrid responded with a 3-1 victory at the Santiago Bernabeu at that time. And then you go back to the COVID-19 season. That was 2019-2020. The two sides still met. Man City getting the better of Man City, beating them home and away by 2-1 in either fixtures to advance for one on aggregate. That was at the round of 16. So really, you can see that there's been many meetings between these two sides. You also have a meeting for them between 2015, 2016, before Pep Guardiola even joins Manchester City. At the time, it was Manuel Pellegrini who was in charge of Man City. Real Madrid advanced on a 1-0 aggregate after a goalless draw in the first leg. Real Madrid won the second leg by 0-0. While you have to also go back in 2012, 2013. You remember that old German final between Bayern Munich and Borussia Dortmund, for which Bayern Munich eventually won by 2-1. Yes, that's the year we are talking about, when Jupp Heynckes first off with Jurgen Klopp at the time when he was still at Borussia Dortmund. Well, the two sides met in Group D of the UEFA Champions League stages, and it was a 1-1 draw at the City of Manchester Stadium, while Real Madrid won the earlier fixture at the Santiago Bernabeu by 3-2. So that's the sort of encounter that we have. That's the stage that has been set for us once again, in as far as this UEFA Champions League draw is concerned. That's why, for me, it's a fixture we cannot skip. Then Atlanta versus Bayern Munich, you feel this is a very, very tilted sort of fixture, if I must say, in terms of being a bit upside down, because we are talking about the 6-time champions of the UEFA Champions League facing up against a team that has never won it. Their only triumph in the in European competition coming back in 2024, when they beat Bayer Leverkusen by 3-0 in the finals of the UEFA Europa League. Ademola Lookman scoring a hat-trick in that one. So really, for me, you feel that Bayern Munich have all the advantage in that particular draw. Then Newcastle versus Barcelona. The two sides already met this season, and Barcelona beat up against Newcastle by 2-1 in that fixture at St. James's Park. For those of you that care to remember, it was Marcus Rashford's brace as well as Anthony Gordon's 90th minute consolation that decided the ties there. Marcus Rashford scoring in the 58th minute and the 67th minutes respectively, in a very dominant performance from Barcelona at the time at St. James's Park. Well, of course, you do feel that given the little history of Newcastle in the UEFA Champions League, still Barcelona with what? With as many as 5 accolades or titles to their name, do have the advantage over Newcastle. But make no mistake, Newcastle will not be a walkover, provided they do not have injuries. And even though you pray that Barcelona do not have a similar case on the other side, it will be quite the contest. And then Atletico Madrid versus Tottenham Hotspur. To be fair to you, I hardly know what to expect of Atletico de Madrid, because on one side they can be blazing hot, on another day they can be freezingly cold. Tottenham Hotspur, same feeling. While they have done well in the UEFA Champions League so far this season, that was under Thomas Frank, who is no longer the manager in there at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. It is now Igor Tudor in charge. We can never quantify what Igor Tudor will be able to bring with a host of injuries that Tottenham Hotspur have had to deal with or contend with throughout the entire campaign, some of whom have never kicked a ball this season, the likes of James Maddison, Dejan Kulusevski, and a couple of others in there. Mohamed Kudus, after a brilliant start to his Tottenham Hotspur career, has been sidelined for majority of the time. Maybe by that time he will be back. You never know. Because these fixtures are going to be played between the 10th and 11th, on 10th and 11th of March, respectively, for the first legs. And then the reverse fixtures will be played on the 17th and the 18th of March. That will be the subsequent week on the home and away basis. So, I mean, it's really, really hard to tell, but of course you would give Atletico Madrid a bit of a slight advantage. They played in 2 finals of the UEFA Champions League, lost both in 2014 and 2016, while Tottenham Hotspur represented in the All-English final of 2019 before losing to Liverpool by 2-0. Then Bordeaux Glimont have little history in that as far as the competition will be up against Sporting Lisbon. We're talking about a Bordeaux Glimont side who by the end of match day 32 of the UEFA Champions League this season by the end of match day 6 of the UEFA Champions League of the league phase, were in 32nd place and were bound for an automatic exit. Then they found themselves back or out of that jinx after beating up against Man City by 3-1 and Atletico de Madrid by 2-1, respectively, on match day 7 and match day 8 to earn qualification to the playoff. When they went to the playoffs, they beat last season's losing finalists in Inter Milan, home and away, by 3-1 and 2-1, respectively, to earn their place in the round of 16. So you cannot really water down their achievement thus far in the competition, and therefore Sporting CP will be aware of the challenge that they do pose. But you feel that Sporting CP, if pedigree was anything, it would stand that they do have the upper arm. But what is pedigree if they just beat the 2010 champions home and away, the 2023 and 2025 losing finals of Inter Milan? So really, you ought to think twice about that point. Then the other fixture, the final fixture, will be between Bayer Leverkusen and Arsenal. Now, little history I know about the fixture, but I did see Bayer Leverkusen back on their social media saying the last time they had met Arsenal in the knockout rounds of the UEFA Champions League, they went all the way to the final. Yes, so Bayer Leverkusen is no walkover, so Arsenal will be wary of the sort of a challenge that these two sides, that Bayer Leverkusen, possess. And whoever advances between Arsenal and Bayer Leverkusen will meet whoever advances between Bodo Glimt and Sporting CP. Whoever advances between Newcastle and Barcelona will meet whoever advances between Tottenham Hotspur and Atletico de Madrid. So you can sort of plan out or think out, predict out how you'd want this draw to play out. Whoever advances between Chelsea and PSG will take on whoever comes through between Galatasaray and Liverpool, and then Real Madrid versus Man City. Whoever goes through that will have a date with Bayern Munich. My humble prayer is for Real Madrid. Now, here's the rough part. I support Real Madrid, so get me right on this one. But I'd rather Man City go through. Yes, this is where time to show where the allegiances lies the most. Why? Because I do support Arsenal on the other side, so I would fancy Manchester City to have more difficult opponents in the running to the Premier League title, to have difficult opponents in the UEFA Champions League. Yes, in the build-up to the final stages of the Premier League title. I mean, if you have 2 games, a double fixture against Real Madrid, and possibly a double fixture against a Bayern Munich, that's interesting, It doesn't guarantee anything in terms of the Premier League title race, but yeah, you do sort of get the feeling of what I'm trying to allude to, that it concerns you more when you have an opponent like Bayern Munich as opposed to having Atlanta, or if you get knocked out by Real Madrid, And the other reason is that, Real Madrid, we're not too hungry for it. We've won a good amount of times for it. And in any case, this season, we've been far from brilliant. Really. So, anyways, that is that. So, moving away from that, that's the draw from the UEFA Champions League. So, you allow me wrap it up at that, and then move on to the Premier League tonight. Because tonight, we do have a game in the Premier League on match day 28 between Wolverhampton Wanderers taking on Aston Villa, with Aston Villa making the trip to Molineux. Now, to the best of my recollection, Aston Villa won the first leg by a 0-0. That was at Villa Park. Yes, I'm trying to remember who scored in that fixture. The 1-0. Yes, it was Boubacar Kamara who scored in that fixture. But Wolves have nothing to play for. That's the first thing, other than pride. For me, I believe the writing is on the wall. They've already been chopped off. I think they have it at the back of their minds that they are going to play in the championship next season. But they still have their pride to play for, because the last couple of results will tell you just as much. Yes, they've lost to Bournemouth, they've lost to Chelsea, but their last 2 results prior to losing to Crystal Palace by 0-0 had been a 2-2 draw against Arsenal and a goalless draw against Nottingham Forest. So they come up against an Aston Villa side who have been far from convincing in their last 5 fixtures, winning away to Newcastle, losing to Brentford at home, losing to Everton sometime prior to that, prior to the Newcastle victory. Then they had the 1-1 draw with AFC Bournemouth, beat up against Brighton and Hove Albion narrowly by 0-0. And then last weekend, they shared the spoils in a 1-1 draw with Leeds United. So they've had it's a little bit turbulent. And then when you look at the last 5 meetings between the two sides, obviously Aston Villa have had the upper hand, are winning 3 of those, are losing 1, which was last season by 2-0 at Molineux, while the other last trip at Molineux ended in a 1-all draw. Now, like I said, there's been 6 draws in this fixture. There's been 7 wins for Wolverhampton Wanderers and 8 wins for Aston Villa. So that means they're not miles apart in terms of head-to-head. In any case, it's that close. The difference is of 1 victory or to the advantage of Aston Villa. Now, Aston Villa's ambitions are clear, is to finish within the top 4 and qualify for the UEFA Champions League. Remember this season, they are playing in the UEFA Europa League, where they are also in the round of 16, really. So, speaking of the round of 16 for the UEFA Europa League, we'll get to look at those as well, maybe, and see how things will go down in there for the round of 16, because those draws were equally drawn, and Aston Villa have a date with with Lille from France. Yes, French Varos have Braga, Genk have Freiburg, Stuttgart have FC Porto, Bologna have AC Roma. Those are 2 Italian teams. You have Nottingham Forest have themselves against Midtjylland. I think that one is from Norway. Lyon have Celta Vigo. Panathinaikos have Royal Betis. So that's the snapshot summary of the UEFA Europa League round of 16. So it's the kind of game that would produce a draw, because, like I said, Aston Villa have been far from convincing. Those injuries to Yuri Tillemans, Boubacar Kamara, John McGinn did not do them well in terms of the absence of those players, because there were some of the key players in this Aston Villa side. Excuse me. So, really, it does promise to be that game, and there's a way. At this stage of the season, pressure kicks in a bit. That ordinarily for games you would be winning, you end up dropping points. We saw that between us and Wolverhampton Wanderers. We saw it between us and Nottingham Forest not too far weeks ago. We saw that sort of pressure pile up, And like I said, Aston Villa losing at home against Brentford, a 10-man Brentford, because Kevin Shada had been sent off, drawing 1-1 against FC Bournemouth, winning against Brighton. I think that goal by Tyrone Mings. Then a 1-all draw. They had to come from a goal down through Tammy Abraham to score the equalizer in that one to pick up the point. So it could end in a 1-all draw, but I'm going to tilt towards Aston Villa winning this game. So yeah, in there. That's what I think. But I think Aston Villa will edge it by 2-1, even though a 1-all draw is what is deep down in my gut feeling of how the match could end. Then, on Saturday, we have an early kickoff between FC Bournemouth against Sunderland at 3:30 p.m. We have 3 games kicking off at 6 p.m. between Burnley and Brentford, Liverpool against West Ham United, Newcastle against Everton, while Leeds United at 8:30 p.m. will be up against Manchester City. Remember, that's the same kickoff time with the Derby de Klaska on Saturday between Borussia Dortmund and Bayern Munich. Bayern Munich won the first leg by 2-1, for those of you that need to be reminded. And then, just quickly, to run through all the fixtures, on Super Sunday, we'll have a game between Brighton and Nottingham Forest at 5 p.m. Fulham against Tottenham Hotspurs, Manchester City against Crystal Palace all at 5 p.m. And then in the late kickoff is the biggest game of the weekend in the Premier League, when Arsenal entertain Chelsea at the Emirates Stadium. Guys, I'm thinking, I don't know if I'll be able to make time, but I think I will. But our morning broadcast tomorrow could come much earlier than the usual 11 sort of a.m. Fixture. Sorry, a kind of time for the preview, for the weekend preview. And the reason for that is because I have a trip to the garage, or I intend to have a trip to the garage. It's not yet been confirmed yet, but I suspect it will be confirmed. And once I have that, usually my trips to the garage are nightmares. It literally takes the entire day. So you'll indulge me on that one. Now, anyways, back to the conversation. So I think we'll be here in the morning to do that bit of the preview for the Sunday fixture. So for now, let's go through the Saturday fixtures, at least in the quickest ways possible. Bournemouth against Sunderland. Bournemouth have had a resurgence of form. They've had some really, really decent results. In fact, they've won 3 of their last 5 fixtures, beating up against Liverpool 3-2, beating Wolves by 2-0, beating Everton by 2-1 away from home, a 1-all draw against Aston Villa, and a goalless draw against West Ham. Really, Sunderland, on the other side, have lost 3 of... Yes, they've lost... in fact, they've lost 4 of their last 5 games. They lost to West Ham by 3-1, beat up against Burnley by 3-0, lost to Arsenal by 3-0, lost to Liverpool by 1-0, and got thrashed by Fulham by 3-1. The absence of Granit Xhaka in their midfield has seen them lack grit, lack leadership, and lack that on-field command that by the extension Granit Xhaka carries onto the pitch from Regis Libris. He's the carrier of the manager's instructions. He keeps them composed. He helps to keep the structure and things like that. He's their captain, but he's been missing out of action for the last couple of weeks. I do suspect he could make the return this weekend when they make the trip away to the Vitality Stadium. When you look at their earlier meeting, earlier run in the season, Sunderland were quite hot at the time, and they won the fixture by 3-2. In fact, they came from 2 goals down to win that fixture at the Stadium of Light. So where they've now lost 2 games, by the way, against Liverpool and against Fulham. But prior to the Liverpool loss, they had yet to lose a game at home. That was Sunderland for you. So it sort of paints for you the kind of picture of how good Sunderland have really, really been decent at home. Nonetheless, this is an away fixture where their form away has been quite the reverse of what their form has been at home. For the other meetings in terms of the last 5 between the two sides, because there's only been 5 meetings between the two sides in as far as the Premier League is concerned, there's been 1 draw and 2 wins for either side. You have to go back to the 2016-2017 season where each side won away from home. And then Bournemouth, when you rewind things further back to 2015-2016, they won at the Vitality Stadium before a 1-all draw between the two sides. Now, the interesting bits here, Bournemouth at home, Andoni Raiola, I'm thinking Bournemouth have the edge. I'm going to go for Bournemouth to win this fixture by 2-1. Yep, that's the prediction I'm going to go with for Bournemouth to win the fixture. I'm still thinking that the likes of Ryan, the likes of Alex Scott, the likes of Adrian Trafford, the likes of Kroppy or Evanilson, maybe an Adams. Tyler Adams, they will rise to sort of the occasion and manage to grind it out against a not so looking good Sunderland by 2-1. Yes, that's my prediction. That's what I will go with for the prediction for that game in the early kickoff. But early kickoffs can sometimes be disappointing. Burnley against Brentford. I mean, Burnley trying to fight relegation, but it's not borne any fruit so far because they remain 19th on the Premier League globe with 19 points, 6 points adrift of West Ham, who are in 18th place, because that's not even the safety net, because they have to chase a Nottingham Forest who are 8 points ahead of them. 8 points do not sound too many, but yes, they managed to grind out a 1-all draw against Chelsea. Could have even won that fixture had they been clinical with some of their late chances from the corner kicks in that fixture, but it never played out that way, and you get the feeling that at home for Burnley, whereas anything can happen, Brentford have been quite the stubborn side. You have a manager in Keith Andrews who has recently just been handed a new contract running until June 2031, and they beat up against Burnley by 3-1 in the first leg. We're talking about a Burnley side whose form in the last 5, not too bad, but not too good, because 2 draws and 1 win, that's a tally of 5 points. Really, they lost 2 games against West Ham and Sunderland. Then Brentford on the other side, a 1-all draw against Arsenal, A 2-0 loss to Brighton, I did not see that coming. A 3-2 away victory to Newcastle and a 1-0 victory away to Aston Villa and a loss to Nottingham Forest kind of gives you the bit of a mixed reaction. They had a very good performance against Arsenal. They could not replicate the same against Brighton. And that's the frustrating bit for me with these small teams. When they meet their peers, the way they crumble away easily, because losing to Nottingham Forest at home by 2-0, that came as a surprise to me. And so, in a way, against Brighton, given what their performances had been away to Newcastle, away to Aston Villa, and at home against Arsenal, those three fixtures were quite some of the highlights of the season for Keith Andrews, potential and things like that. So it sort of bothers me. And then between these two sides, again, there have been only 5 meetings in the Premier League between the two sides. Burnley have only won twice and lost the other 3. So there's not been any draws. If you're Burnley fighting against relegation, you're at home, fancy yourself to get a point out of this one. Martin Dubravka, Kyle Walker, with his leadership, let them sort of rise to the occasion and try to inspire a team, this team into picking up at least another point or 3 points. Leslie Ugucheku, Handball Mejbury, Anthony, Fleming, Edwards, Esteve. Of course, against Chelsea had been reduced to 10 men thanks to the sending off of Wesley Fofana with a straight red card. With a red card after second booking in that game. So it sort of gave them a bit of a numerical advantage. You do not suspect that it will be the same case against Brentford. But I feel that Brentford, to be honest, or to be fair, are the stronger side. But if Burnley, if Scott Parker is anything serious about fighting relegation and having any chance of winning this relegation battle, then I think Brentford is the kind of fixture that you hype yourself for to try and win. It won't be a walk in the park, and I'm not convinced that Burnley will win. I do not say draw. There's never been one. I'm going to go Brentford to win 2-1. Yep. As unfortunate as that may sound for the Burnley people. Then Liverpool versus West Ham at Anfield. If Liverpool dare come with the kind of attitude, with the kind of mentality, with the kind of performance that they showcased away to the City ground at Nottingham Forest, they will get beat by this West Ham side. Yes, West Ham has been one of the most inconsistent sides so far this season, because right when you think, they're starting to gather pace, pick up a little bit of form, that's then when they drop the ball, because they beat up against Sunderland by 3-1 quite convincingly, went away to Chelsea and led by 2-0, and then squandered that and lost by 3-2. They managed to go away and beat up against Burnley by 2-0, forced Manchester United in a 1-1 draw, and then, in fact, it was Man United that forced West Ham into a 1-1 draw. Then shared the Spurs in a goalless draw against Bournemouth. And you're thinking to yourself, maybe they do still have a chance about surviving relegation, because above them is Nottingham Forest, not doing any much better. Above them is Tottenham Hotspurs, who got thrashed last weekend by 4-1 against their London rivals in Arsenal at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. So you feel that West Ham have a fighting chance against the Liverpool side, who have lost 2 of their last 5 fixtures, against FC Bournemouth by 3-2, losing to Man City by 2-1. We remember the shenanigans of that fixture, including a red card to Dominic Szoboszlai, and then in between there, winning 4-1 convincingly against Newcastle, a 1-0 marginal win away to Sunderland, and 1-0 against Nottingham Forest, having to leave it late. So they've been very unconvincing in their performances. But if there's anything that you can bet on, is Liverpool's dominancy in this particular tie, because after 59 meetings, West Ham only have 10 wins, 38 losses, 11 draws. I do not envision a draw. It is a very possible result. In fact, I'll go for a 1-1 draw between Liverpool and West Ham. Yep. Why? Liverpool can sometimes be unserious. And West Ham on the other side, if they can get to summon the energies of Thomas Soucek, Gerard Bowen, Somerville, who has been in quite decent form recently, as well as Matheus Fernandes in that midfield, Aaron Wan-Bissaka, one of the best defenders, 1v1 for a right back in the Premier League, you do think that maybe, just maybe, West Ham can grind out a point in this one. Of course, Liverpool have the home advantage and everything like that. But I feel a 1-1 draw could be the kind of result that we get to see. There's not been a draw in this fixture since the 2023-2024 campaign, which was a 2-2 draw at the London Stadium. But I don't know. I'm just not feeling too enthused about Liverpool and their performances recently. Against Sunderland, they looked much better. Against Nottingham Forest, I don't know if they were afraid of Nottingham Forest because Nottingham Forest had beaten them in the first leg by 3-0. One of the other worst performances of the season. But Dominic Szoboszlai needs to summon his form back. Fran Witz, Hugo Ekitike, Mohamed Salah needs to get his scoring boots back. Anyway, he hasn't had them the entire season. Cody Gakpo, McAllister had to salvage the 3 points for this Liverpool side. Virgil van Dijk and Ibrahim Konate, of course, they will contest well. Milos Kakis, who plays at right back? Do you put Szoboszlai or you put Joe Gomez? Or do you play there Curtis Jones, like the case was against Nottingham Forest? I do not know. But whatever Arne Slot does, he had better win this fixture because the one advantage he has this weekend, and it's not a given, yes, but Arsenal play Chelsea. Remember, the fight for the top 4 is largely involved with 3 sides. Manchester United, who are currently 4th with 3 points ahead of the other 2, Liverpool and Chelsea. Now, Chelsea are ahead of Liverpool on better goal difference because they are all on 45 points. So, if you're Liverpool, you do fancy yourself that I beat West Ham and press so hard that on Sunday, Chelsea go in their game when they know I've already won. That adds a little bit more pressure to their plate, and they go away to the table leaders, Arsenal, who could cause them to drop points. It could be 2 points. It could be an entirely 3 points. So you ought to give yourself a chance. You ought to give yourself a chance. And giving yourself a chance starts with winning this kind of fixture. Yeah, winning this kind of fixture. Like I said, my prediction, my gut feeling has a 1-1 draw. But I wouldn't be too surprised if Liverpool won it. In any case, they are expected to win it. But I'll stick with the 1-1 draw for that game. And then in the other game still, will be still on Saturday. We'll have Newcastle against Everton. Newcastle is one of those teams who have had quite a very turbulent season in as far as the Premier League is concerned. When you look at their last 5 results, losing to Man City by 2-1, losing to Brentford, losing to Liverpool, losing to Aston Villa, losing 4 of their last 5 fixtures, and only winning away to Tottenham Hotspur is not the kind of Premier League form you would want. Yes, they've done tremendously well in the UEFA Champions League, but knocking out Karabakh 9-3 on aggregate after a 6-1 victory and a 3-2 victory in the reverse fixture gives them a bit of a sigh of relief. But knowing that they have Manchester City in the FA Cup, and now they have to play Everton, a team they managed to beat by 4-1 in the first leg, a team they managed to still beat away from home last season. Sorry, a team they lost to away at home at St. James's Park by 0-0. This was the very last game for Newcastle of the season. Excuse me. But despite losing that fixture, they still managed to qualify for the UEFA Champions League because Chelsea had managed to beat up against Nottingham Forest that were equally in contention for that slot. Excuse me. Because on the same final day, Man United beat up against Aston Villa by 2-0. So it is what it is. There's been 2 draws over the last 5 meetings, 2 victories for Everton and 1 for Newcastle, which was a 4-1 victory earlier on in the season. They will come in good spirits. They've welcomed back some players. Jolinton, very unhappy after being substituted in that Karabakh game. I saw Anthony Gordon come on. Harvey Barnes was in there. Anthony Elanga. Newcastle have a decent team, but they just struggle to win games in the Premier League this season. That's why their position on the Premier League table as low as 11th with 36 points and 1 point ahead of them, being Everton. I do it's quite representative of the kind of performances they managed to put on board so throughout the campaign of this season. And if you remember, following their loss, I think, to Brentford, Ed Howe was quite self-critical of his own self, of how his team has underperformed, of how he's not lived to the expectations. Nonetheless, he's never sort of recovered fully from that, because still they beat up against Tottenham and then lost to Man City. Yes, they had a good fight at the Etihad Stadium, but it was not good enough because they still could not secure points. And with all that pressure, that midweek engagement, a well-rested Everton disappointed from their 1-0 loss to Manchester United, a game in which they competed really, really well, but still dropped the 3 points thanks to that goal from Benjamin Sesko. Very cruel, the manner in which they lost that game, but it is what it is. So, because Everton have lost their last 2 games, they've drawn 2 and won 1 in the last 5. I do not think they will lose the 3rd consecutive game. I don't see that happening for David Moyes. I don't know if they will win. I'm not convinced they will win. I'd want to go with the 1-1 draw, but I'm going to go for Everton to win this one 2-1. Yeah, very unflattering prediction. I see Keenan Risbury Hall, Ilman Ndiaye trying to rise to the occasion. Maybe Tony Barry will have a better night. You never know. But it was quite disappointing, the manner in which they lost. James Tarkowski could not keep up with the pace of Benjamin Sesko in the build-up to that goal. Brilliant pass from Matthias Cunha to find Brian Mbeumo, who provided the assist, and things like that. So anyway, it is what it is. Then Leeds versus Manchester City. The first leg ended 3-2 in favor of Man City, but Man City had to leave it late thanks to a late goal by Phil Foden, after Leeds had come from 2 goals down to fight their way back in that fixture. So, and that was at the Etihad Stadium through Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who was scoring to cancel out Phil Foden's opener and Joshko Vardiolo's goal, as well as Numenka, and then a 91st minute winner from Phil Foden. It was far from a convincing performance from Man City, but you will argue that is still won nonetheless, because that's all that matters. In any case, Leeds have not beaten up against Manchester City in their last 5 games. They've lost all. In any case, in some of the 2 fixtures, and this was in the 2021-2022 season, they conceded 11 goals without scoring over the 2 legs. Now, in the subsequent 3 fixtures, they've scored at least 4 goals, but still have never conceded no less than 2. I'll go with the 3-1 victory for Man City, even though Leeds, ever since losing to Manchester City in the first leg by 3 goals to 2, in the whole host of games they played in between there, they've only lost 2 games. Against Newcastle by 4 goals to 3, and against Arsenal by 4 goals to 0. Worthy opponents, you'd argue. But they've had the knack of fighting themselves into getting results. Majority of those have been draws. Drawing against Sunderland, drawing against Liverpool, drawing against Man United, forcing Chelsea in a 2-2 draw despite going 2-0 down. So it's the kind of fixture that you may want to give Leeds a chance to fight their way back. But their recent form is indicative of that kind of run of form, where they've had 3 draws against Everton, Chelsea, and Aston Villa in their most recent fixture, with a 3-1 victory against Nottingham Forest, and they lost to Arsenal. Whereas Manchester City have had the better form, winning 4 of their last 5 and drawing only 1. They have, I think, one of the best on-form report cards in as far as the Premier League is concerned. Man City, Man United have, I think, the best report card. 4 wins and 1 draw in their last 5 fixtures. That's as good as a report card you'll get. When you look at the column for Leeds, they've had 1 loss, 3 draws, and 1 win. I feel they could lose this other game because Man City just know how to behave around this zone, around this corner of the Premier League, of the season. Yes, they've had underwhelming performances in their second halves, but they tend to blow away teams in the first half and get the job done. So then they just fight to live on and see out the results. When it comes to the second half, of course, a little bit of hard work and luck, a combination of those for them to get away with it. But I feel that Leeds could lose this one maybe by 3-1. At least that's my prediction for that game. Anyways, quickly, since I'm not too sure about my presence here tomorrow morning, let's take a bite on some of those games that will come on Sunday. And whichever games will leave, that's where we'll start tomorrow. Brighton versus Nottingham Forest. I'm not sure what to make of this fixture. And the reason as to why I say that is Brighton have been far from convincing. They're 14th on the Premier League table. You look at their last set of results. Yes, they won away to Brentford, but they lost to Crystal Palace. They lost to Aston Villa by 1-0, a draw at Everton, a loss to Fulham. I mean, only one win in the last 5 and 1 draw. Not very convincing. Nottingham Forest have been beaten by Leeds and Liverpool in the last 5, had 3 draws and 1 win. So the differences are not too much. Only two draws have happened between these two sides. Brighton edging it with 3 wins and Forest with 2 wins over a 7 fixture meeting between the two sides in the Premier League. So that their history between themselves in the Premier League is not that extensive. So Brighton won the first leg by 2-0. Last season, Nottingham Forest beat Brighton 7-0 in a reverse fixture that had preceded a 2-2 draw after the first leg. So Nottingham Forest, the season prior, had beaten up against Brentford, had beaten up against Nottingham Forest home and away. I do not see them completing a double. I'm going to go with the leap of faith because Nottingham Forest had some really rested legs for their 2-1 loss to Fenerbahce. And they managed to advance to the round of 16 in the UEFA Europa League, thanks to that goal consolation by Callum Hudson-Odoi, who came on in the second half, the likes of Ola Aina, Ibrahim Sangare, later on Morgan Gibbs-White, as well as there's a striker who came, Igor Jesus, came on for Lorenzo Ruka. I saw Omari Hudson had a bit of a bright performance in that game. So he had rested some players for that game, and then he would want to recover from the disappointment in the manner in which they lost that Liverpool game. So, in other words, Vitor Pereira has managed Nottingham Forest through 3 games. He's lost 2 and only won 1. Yes, he's lost the 2 Premier League games. Sorry, he's lost a game in the Premier League against Liverpool and against Fenerbahce, and then 1-1. So, I think he needs to get on the good books of Evangelis Marinakis before he fires him, because he's been the sacking boss this season, because Vitor Pereira is their 4th manager after Nuno Espirito Santo, Ange Postecoglou, as well as Sean Dyche so far this season. I'll go with the leap of faith and think that Nottingham Forest will nick this one by 2-1. They're not known to have won at the Amex Stadium before, but anything can happen, so I'll go with Nottingham Forest winning by 2-1. Yes, Danny Welbeck, Yankuba Minte, Kaoru Mitoma, Yassine Ayari, Kadioglu, what's his name? Lewis Dunk will need to pull up their stockings. Carlos Baleba in that midfield. And then we have a London derby on our hands when Tottenham Hotspurs make the trip to Fulham. To be honest, I do not feel any confidence whatsoever about this Tottenham Hotspur side, who lost the first leg, by the way, by 2-1. A team that have struggled to win away at Craven Cottage, because their last 2 trips there, they've not scored even a goal. They've lost by 3-0 and 2-0 respectively. And in the last 5 fixtures, Fulham has won this fixture 3 times, drawn 1 and lost only 1. We're talking about a Tottenham Hotspur side who have lacked the biting teeth in the Premier League. They have one of the worst run of forms in the Premier League currently, with 3 losses in the last 5, 3 consecutive losses, 2 draws, a 2-2 draw against Burnley and a 2-2 draw against Manchester City, losing to Man United 2-0, losing to Newcastle by 2-1 and 4-1 against Arsenal. Fulham, on the other side, have not covered themselves in much glory because they've only beaten up against Sunderland by 3-1, very impressive result, and 2-1 against Brighton. Willis lost to Man United, to Everton, and Man City. You'd argue that those were worthy opponents to lose to, but did they lose to Everton? Yeah, they lost to Everton at home. I remember, I think one of those was an own goal by Bernard Leno. Yes, and Kenan Brisbane Hall scoring that one. So, but I will fancy Marco Silva, who, by the way, could be auditioning for the same job that Igor Tudor has in case things were to go right. Today I was reading reports that Roberto Di Zerbi would prefer the Tottenham Hotspur job over to the Man United job. I do not know whether he knows something that we don't, but at least that's what his preference is. So, Tottenham, with so many injuries, that's not going to change for the near future, but they still have a good set of lineup. Joao Paulinho, Juves Pisoma, Pape Matsa, Achai Gray, Mickey van de Ven. I think Cristiano Romero will still be suspended for this one. Vicario, Randall Colomwani, Dominic Solanke, Xavi Simons, very good players. But Harry Wilson on the other side, Calvin Bassey, Ryan Sessegnon, Emil Smith-Rowe. We're talking about Alex Iwobi, players that were laughing at Tottenham Hotspur as they got demolished by Arsenal last weekend. So I'm thinking they'll be looking at that and say we cannot laugh at them one weekend for getting thrashed by Arsenal and then we lose to the same side. So I'll go for Fulham to win this fixture by 2-1. I have a feeling they'll be motivated for it. Then Manchester United versus Crystal Palace. We know Man United won the first leg by 2-1. Joshua Zirkzee and Mason Mount, the goal scorers in that one. Man United, I don't remember the last time Manchester United lost a game of football, by the way. That's an impressive run they've been on. I don't remember the last time they lost. Like I said, they have one of the best league forms in as far as Premier League is concerned. Only one draw in their last 5. And when you look at their last 6, they've won 5 and drawn 1. They won all draw against West Ham. They've beaten Everton, Tottenham Hotspur, Arsenal, Fulham, Man City. So, they're in very, very decent form. In terms of, ever since the turn of the new year, I do not think there's a team that has garnered more points than Man United. So they are that impressive. They managed to beat Crystal Palace 2-1, Felipe Mateta scoring for the penalty spot. This is a kind of fixture that they've sort of won over the last 2 outings, drawn the other, when you extend it to the last 5, and lost 2. There's that season when they lost home and away, 2023, 2024, including them getting thumped by 4-0 under Ten Hag. But things are much, much better now. Brian Mbeumo, Amadou Diallo, Matas Cunha, Benjamin Sesko, Bruno Fernandes, Casemiro, Kobe Mainu, whichever the players that they may assemble, you feel that they will be sort of a better team to handle this Crystal Palace side, who, by the way, played yesterday, that was on Thursday, as they won by 2-0 against Munster for them to advance to the round of 16 in the UEFA Conference League. And I saw Oliver Glasner speaking about that and trying to paint some context and say Chelsea had a nearly £2 billion squad last season when they won the UEFA Conference League. And yes, while the team that they were up against, the budget-wise, they are much further away from them. It still doesn't make it easy for them when it comes to squad rotation because they're a bit short on numbers. They've had some injuries in there as well. 2 players like Jean-Philippe Mateta, they lost their Ebeleche Eze in the summer. They went on to lose their captain in Mackay. Mr. Consistent says, I no want Arsenal winning final, then they will be like we are best and start comparing their players to goats. I do not think Arsenal have any goat whatsoever in their squad, regardless of whatever the opinion of any of their fans will be. The only case that you could make for them that if they were to win the quadruple, maybe a player or 2 from their squad could compete for the Ballon d'Or. But like I said, in a World Cup year, it's really, really hard for you to win it if you do not go on to win the World Cup, or at least you have to finish in the later stages of the World Cup the way it was in 2018 when Luka Modric was being crowned. You remember he took his Croatian side to the finals before losing to France. So I do not think there's an Arsenal player that I really, really could look at and I say, yeah, he's the greatest of all time. No, not in their position, really. They have really, really decent players, some of whom you'd perhaps debate or could try to make the case or argue that they are world-class players, but it's a subjective matter in itself. Arsenal fans every season winning final, then they lose super hard. Well, I mean, for you to give yourself a chance, you must get there in the first place, especially for the cup competitions. So, for example, they've made it to the final of the EFL Cup. They have Man City, a very difficult opponent. One, if they lost to, you'd say they lost to a worthy opponent. They're still in the running for the FA Cup. They are still in the UEFA Champions League. Whatever they do in those competitions, for themselves to give themselves a chance at winning them, you must make it to the final. That's the criteria number one. Make it to the final and then make your case there. But until you get to the final, then you have no case or business even thinking that you are close to winning it because you're always far from it. When it comes to the Premier League, it's a marathon. We know the point difference at the moment. We know Man City have that game in hand. The destiny for those that want to win the Premier League title is within their respective hands, both for Arsenal and both for Man City. The objective is simple: win all your remaining games, and the title is yours. Man City have the same task, as Arsenal do have the same task. Arsenal have to meet Man City on April the 18th. Prior to that, they will have met on March the 22nd in the finals of the EFL Cup. So we can only wait and see. The only prayer you would have for both sides is not to stumble until then. Otherwise, it's in their destiny to determine who wins it. So, what was the worst Ballon d'Or winner? Be honest, not to glaze. Worst Ballon d'Or winner? Worst Ballon d'Or winner? That's a bit of a challenging question. I'm trying to think really hard. There's one that was really, really contentious. And it's not too far back. Was it Cristiano Ronaldo at the expense of Robert Lewandowski? In one of those seasons, I seem to remember. There's one of that moment. By the way, I'm a cricket fan. I just know little football knowledge. It's all good, Mr. Consistent. I hope you're enjoying the World Cup Cricket T20 there. I think India have to play West Indies, is it? Or Sri Lanka. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I know Zimbabwe were knocked out. I've not followed much of the World Cup T20, but I know it's happening over there in India and Sri Lanka. I think they are the co-hosts. So, anyways, I think it would be around Cristiano Ronaldo, maybe. That 2013 period when you had Robert Lewandowski. Actually, yes, around 2013, I thought Robert Lewandowski, maybe Frank Ribéry and Arjen Robben had to make a case for that Ballon d'Or because they won the UEFA Champions League in 2013 after beating Borussia Dortmund by 2-1 in the final. But somehow they gave it to Cristiano Ronaldo. And then back in 2010, I never agreed with that. Yes, Lionel Messi had broken records scoring 92 goals in a calendar year. But for me, Iniesta, Wesley Sneijder deserved that Ballon d'Or because Sneijder had won a domestic treble with Inter Milan. They won the UEFA Champions League, beating Bayern 2-0 in the final. They won the Coppa Italia. They won the Scudetto. Then Barcelona had won the UEFA Champions League. Barcelona had not won the Champions League, but Spain won the World Cup with Iniesta scoring the winning goal. They had reached the semifinals of the UEFA Champions League before losing to Inter Milan. They had won the league in 2010 there. So that was, I think, Pep Guardiola's third consecutive La Liga title. So for me, and then they brought it down to goals. And then that's how they gave it to Lionel Messi, something I never agreed with. So yeah, did Ronaldo have his downfall when he went to the Saudi Pro League? I think yes, but the most, so I'll ask you. He did not have his downfall. I mean, he's in the evenings of his career. He's 41 years of age. So going to the Saudi Pro League has helped the Saudi Pro League more than it has helped Cristiano Ronaldo. But also, for a man in his evening days, that's the better league to play in. In any case, we would be advocating that he goes to the Major League Soccer, So I don't think it's hurt him. He's no longer at his best, at his peak, so he's not going to be competing for the Ballon d'Or and things like that. Usually, it's one competed for by majority of players from Europe, oftentimes. So I do not think that will be the case. He's trying to pursue that 1,000 goal mark. I think he has about 37 goals still left to score for him to cross that. We can only wait and see. I think it's one that he can achieve. He can play on until his 50s. For as long as he keeps his body in shape. But yesterday he bought 25% stake in Segunda Club Almeria. So he's a co-owner on that regard. Anyways, to wrap up with the Man United Crystal Palace fixture, like I told you guys, Crystal Palace played yesterday. They had to use a lot of energy. Goals from Maxence Lecroix and Ivan Guessand were enough to give Crystal Palace the 2-0 victory that they needed against Monster to advance to the round of 16. So I believe they will come with a bit of tired legs against a well-drilled, a well-rested Manchester United who will give them a run for their money. So I'm going to go Man United to win that game by 3-1. It won't be a walk in the park, or may not be a walk in the park, but defensively, Crystal Palace have looked far from their best in recent times. So Ronaldo is more fit than nowadays 41 edge ankles, so he never having a fall down. Well, he doesn't get so many injuries, so that also helps, and he does not need to work as hard as he used to. He just needs to position himself right for him to be banging in the goals. Anyways, you will allow me to leave the Premier League at that. Tomorrow morning when we come, we'll do the preview for the game between Arsenal and Chelsea. So quickly, here is what to come from elsewhere in as far as Europe is concerned. Tonight, Levante are up against Deportivo Aves, while in the German Bundesliga, Augsburg take on FC Cologne. In the Italian Serie A, Parma against Cagliari, while Strasbourg in the French League One have RC Lens. Then going into Saturday, Barcelona will be in action against Villarreal. Not an easy game, by the way, but earlier than that, Rayo Vallecano will be up against Athletic Bilbao. Are you seeing the information on the laptop? Yeah, I have a list of fixtures that are coming my way. So I cannot cram all the fixtures from the 5 top leagues from across the world in my head the way I have to, keep up with information when it comes to player injuries and other things. For the rest of the other analysis, that's strictly off head. But when it comes to, this run of fixtures that I'm reading to you, it's strictly off from my screen. I mean, I don't think I've seen anybody give a run of fixtures from 5 leagues without reading them off a script or something. So yeah, that's the honest bit. Rayo Vallecano up against Athletic Bilbao. That game will come at 4 p.m. At a 6:15 p.m., Barcelona will take on Villarreal. Mallorca will up against Real Sociedad, while Rio Oviedo will take on Atletico de Madrid. That's for the Spanish La Liga. Okay, gotta go. My good luck. Arsenal is still gonna be bans after 10 years. Wow. Okay. Thank you so much for having been part of the broadcast. I hope you've liked the broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel before you bow yourself out. In the German Bundesliga, Bayer Leverkusen will be up against Mainz 05 at 5:30 p.m. as do Borussia Mönchengladbach alongside Union Berlin, and then Hoffenheim against St. Pauli, while Werder Bremen will take on Heidenheim. And then at 8:30 p.m., like I told you, it's the Derby di Classica between Borussia Dortmund and Bayern Munich. In the Italian Serie A, Como will be up against Lecce at 5 p.m., while at 8 p.m., Napoli will be away to Hellas Verona. Inter at 10:45 p.m. will be at home against Genoa. In the French League One, Rennes will take on Toulouse, AC Monaco will take on Angers, while Le Havre will be up against Paris Saint-Germain. That's for Saturday. And then on Super Sunday, we will have Elche up against Espanyol. Real Madrid will have to wait until Monday when they play Getafe. So Real Madrid fans, you may have to take a chill pill on this weekend and wait until Monday. But Elche take on Espanyol at 4 p.m. At 6:15 p.m., Valencia up against Osasuna. Osasuna beat Real Madrid in their last outing. Real Betis will be up against Sevilla at 8:30 p.m., while at 11 p.m., Girona will be up against Celta Vigo. That's in as far as the Spanish La Liga is concerned. On Sunday, the German Bundesliga, VfB Stuttgart will be up against Wolfsburg. Eintracht Frankfurt will take on Freiburg. Hamburg SV will take on RB Leipzig. While in the Italian Serie A, Cremonese will take on AC Milan at 2:30 p.m. At 5 p.m., Sassuolo will take on Atlanta, fresh from beating up against Borussia Dortmund by 4 goals to 1 to knock them out 4-3 in the UEFA Champions League playoffs. At Torino, at 8 p.m. will be up against Lazio, while at a quarter to 11 p.m. we have the big one from the Italian Serie A when AC Roma entertain Juventus. In the French League 1, Paris will be up against Nice, Lille will take on Nantes, Lorient will be up against Auxerre, Métis will take on Brest, while Olympique Marseille will be up against Olympique Lyon. So that's the run of fixtures from the top 5 leagues of Europe in as far as this weekend is concerned. If you've not had your team, then probably they could be playing on a Monday night. Otherwise, guys, you will allow me wrap this one up here. Thanks so, Mr. Consistent, for your kind, comments and submissions. Rob Rev, thank you so much. All of those that have been part of the broadcast, those who liked, those who didn't like, those who watch our conversations, these live broadcasts long after they've ended, those who watch our shorts, those who watch our videos, those who comment, those who like, those who do not comment, but you still watch anyway. I still take your love and I don't take your love and support for granted. I appreciate you a great deal. I wish you a blessed Friday night and a beautiful weekend ahead. Go and enjoy whatever fixtures there is tonight, and let's do this again tomorrow, very early in the morning, because like I told you, I may have other engagements on the same day. Stay blessed, and bye-bye for now. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.